All right, welcome back. This is Jesse A.M. for Beat About Late Night with Big Daddy Voodoo, who is joining us for our second part of the Arts and Culture interviews. We hope everybody joined us Thursday night for our live show and that you caught Amanda Miller's special interview earlier this week. So, Big Daddy Voodoo, let's hash it out here. Tell us about the Secret Society Vaudeville and the Little City Roller Girls.
Oh, well, you have to know about one to know about the other for me. For 8 years, I've been the announcer for Little City Roller Girls. Maybe I'll tell you later about how I became announcer, but I've been announcing for Little City Roller Girls. You know, roller derby, it's a live sporting event, and they've evolved in a way that they need an announcer that is doing the play-by-play. I mean, it's like listening to NASCAR on the radio. What I started off doing is I would just point out the obvious, the stuff that everybody can see. I would start throwing in some bad jokes. And eventually, over years of practice and hooking up with my fellow wizards or other announcers across the nation, I really learned some techniques that really work in roller derby. And so other teams started asking me to announce. So now I announce for Little City Roller Girls. I announce for the Blue Ridge Roller Girls in Asheville. I've been known to announce for just about anybody that'll have me. I've announced for the Star City Roller Girls in Roanoke. I've announced for, it's starting to fade, Greenville Derby Dames, Greenville, South Carolina. I've announced, all over. That's the thing. Is once you start doing your thing and people like what you do, they start asking you back. So I ended up announcing all over this region, all the way out to, I haven't done Palmetto. They're on the very edge of Myrtle Beach, but I've gone as far as Columbia and Savannah and Atlanta to announce Derby. But after 8 years of announcing roller derby for all these teams, for traveling all over, seeing how much of their heart and souls these teams are putting into their bout production. I mean, in roller derby, you don't have an organization that's paying for all of this. Every individual team has to raise their own money and then put on their own bouts. And to put on a bout, I don't know if you guys realize this, but you got the venue you got to pay for. You've got merchandise, you've got concessions, you've got halftime entertainment, you've got all of these things. And when you're an announcer, your job is to keep everything on time because you have between 5 p.m. and 8 p.m. to get all this stuff crammed in, and it has to be done, and you have to mention your sponsors, and you have to mention the happy birthdays and all this stuff. So years of this and getting the discipline and understanding how to do it, I started teaching how to announce. So I started training roller derby announcers on how to do what I do. I'm not saying that I'm the end-all be-all, but there were some sucky roller derby announcers. When I started, there was an announcer. I went to a bout, and this team is so athletic and strong, and these girls trained hours and hours and hours a week. And this announcer would not only make nothing but lesbian jokes for 3 hours. His little buddy, at one point, the most unfunny thing I ever saw is through the whole bout between lesbian jokes, he would say, you're going to do a David Lee Roth impression a little bit later, right? Oh, yeah. You're going to do So finally it comes on, show us your David Lee Roth. So the guy gets up and starts taking off his clothes. And he's got a leopard spotted tiger striped onesie that he's wearing under it. And he puts on a blonde wig. And everybody's laughing. Everybody's like, this guy's funny. This guy's funny. And then he goes, I'm David Lee Roth. I'm David Lee Roth. I'm David Lee Roth. I was like, this is wrong. This is not the way you need to do things. So I kind of went on a little private derby crusade to train people in the right way to talk to an audience, to connect with an audience, to appreciate the game, to appreciate the bigger picture, to give the girls the respect that they deserve. So this guy got fired. They hired me on. Well, they didn't hire me. There's no money in roller derby. Everybody's volunteer. They asked me to come announce for the team, and It was a blow. I just remember the game. Whatever the game was, it was a blowout. The home team is winning by like 500 points. I mean, literally, they are 500 points ahead of this other team. This other team shouldn't have even been on skates. And it was so bad that after 30 minutes of watching this just absolute brutal, it was so, and again, I'm not kidding, the home team was skating backwards around the other team and making faces at them, and people were just standing up and leaving. And every derby bout is, the important thing about roller derby you need to understand is they're about community, and they're about giving back. So the charity for this bout was the Girl Scouts. So when my co-announcer goes, wow, that was a real, and you're going to have to probably bleep me here, so I'm giving you a little warning, that was a total vajazzle. Everyone in this arena stopped talking. Everyone looked at these lovely teenage girls, the teenage and under girls, the Girl Scouts that were standing around us in absolute horror. So this guy was fired. I got his job. I started announcing, and I started training announcers. And my announcers have gone, the announcers I've trained have gone on to do all these playoffs and national level stuff. I'm so proud of all these folks that over the years I've trained. Okay. So that was Derby. Derby was everything. That was all I did. I would occasionally do a fundraiser or something like that. But through these, literally, I mean, it's 8 years that I did roller derby, and I wasn't just announcing. These girls were so amazing. The Little City Roller Girls were so amazing that I got involved in in all of the management. I became on the executive board. I took over all these different jobs. I did their graphic. I helped make the posters for the team. I'm not a graphic designer, but I produce the graphic designers. I got all these skills from just years of having to help produce, having to help manage, having to help do all of the things that it takes to put on a bout, to manage an organization. And so now in 2014, actually in 2013, let's roll back, I told the girls, look, I've been doing this now for years. I feel like I really need to just step back and reconnect with my real life. Because in roller derby, you're doing roller derby or you're wasting your time. I mean, everything you do has to be kind of geared towards roller derby. That's the mentality. There's no one's getting paid, but these girls are so passionate and love what they do so much. And so me, as one of the rare guys that was involved, one of the rare guys that actually got involved and didn't just make everyone angry, I had enough. I just had to stop. It was a time where I need to see what else I can do with all this stuff I've learned. So I took about half the year, and I'd retired from Derby. I didn't do any of it. I would announce for teams. I'll always announce. I will announce as long as I'm able. But I needed something. Without the bout production, without all the stress, without all of these extracurricular things that I was doing, something was missing. I just wanted something that I could control and put out something creative, because that's my thing. Ever since I can remember, it's been create, write, direct. I've made short films for years. I mean, actually, let me correct that. I failed at creating short films for years. I spent literally 10 years of my life. I must have lined up 12 short films, and I got 3 of them done. But I was very proud of all of them. So here I am years later, and I'm like, I don't know what to do. One day on Facebook, this girl that I had announced on the stage at Roan Street during Blue Plum. I've been announcing the Roan Street stage, bringing out bands. And this one year, instead of a band, it was a belly dance crew, the Mona Lisa belly dance crew. So this girl I'd met her there, and we had talked very briefly before she went on. She was a really cool girl. She sent me a Facebook request. A year goes by. One day, I don't even remember, I think it was, I had said how Johnson City needs something to bring together all these weirdo talents, that all these people that I've met. And so Angie replied to me And she's like, we ought to work together on something like that. And I was like, yeah, that's exactly what we need to do. And so within a week, we're sitting down at Willow Tree Coffee House in Johnson City, and we're talking about these. We were on the same wavelength. We had always wanted the same thing. We're both locals. She actually currently lives in Kingsport, but she's local. I mean, Tri-Cities represent. We're all one chunk. Even if we want to keep our city identities, there just aren't enough of us to do that. So we're all like one chunk here. It was astounding that she had always wanted to do something that would bring together just different talents, whether it was somebody, putting their hand under their armpit and making farting noises, or someone that had trained for years to a specialized skill. We wanted a place where people could go and just show off this creativity because, again, creativity is something that through my entire life, even my professional life, creativity is like one of the pinnacles, one of the big things that I'm passionate about. And so right there that night at Willow Tree, I turned to the owner, Terry, who I'd known for years thanks to roller derby. Terry had opened Willow Tree because she had been chasing bands with her daughter for years, and she wanted a place to go where she could just ask the bands to come to her. And so she opens Willow Tree Coffee House and brings all these great bands that she's been following for years, and she sets them up. And I'm like, Terry, I know you got bands all the time, but could we use your place to do some kind of new thing? I want to call it vaudeville. I want it to be the short acts, the one-trick ponies. I would always use the example of the guy with a duck under his arm. It was very famous in the 20s. The guy had a duck under his arm, and he would come. He would play, he was a vaudeville star. He would sing a song, and at certain points in the song, the duck would sing along with him. They're going quack quack. It was huge. That's what vaudeville was about. You get 15 acts for 5 cents. That was vaudeville. And I was like, what we're going to do is we're going to take your stage, which is already beautiful, and there's a great vibe about Willow Tree Coffee House in Johnson City. We're going to take your stage, and we want to just show off the weird, the kooky, the odd. We don't even know what it is yet. And Terry, being Terry, she's like, "Oh, sure, that's exactly what we've wanted. That's lovely," because she's such a nice person. So, within a month, we had our first meeting. We had a little show. We took some people. A guy was a human blockhead. We found someone who was a comedian. We found somebody that just played really weird songs. We did a little demo. And at this demo, this wasn't even a show. This was like, come and see what's interesting about it. We had 30 people show up. And we're like, holy crap. Okay, next month we're doing a show. Next month we set up, we did a show. 60 people came. We had, not only did we have the blockhead and the comedian, we had, oh gosh, I can't even remember all of them. We had a lot of really odd and really varied acts. And it turned out great. We asked vendors to come in. I said, we're not charging you anything. Just come in and set up. We had Jimmy James, who I hate to do a plug, but Jimmy James Toys. He makes floggers and riding crops. This is his product. And Jimmy is just the nicest guy, and he did crazy business that night. So the next time, I'm like, we're going to need $10 per vendor. We're going to charge a donation at the door. We're going to ask for $2, but if you can't afford it, come on in. We want to show you the creativity that these people have. Just if you have to choose between paying at the door or tipping these people, you do it. And so we had another 60 people show up for our last show in July. We made, my gosh, we asked for $2 at the door. Some people gave us $20 at the door. We had people that tipped us $20 to the house, not even counting what the performers got. We had people that were really, really passionate about helping out and supporting creativity, because what we want to do is we have these performers and they need reinforcement. They need to know that even though what they're doing is weird, they need something that makes them keep working on it, and so that's where the tips come in.
And that's what makes it so interesting to me, is that it's a catch-all. If you don't like what you see, you can walk out the door and walk back in 5 minutes later. You can see a human blockhead belly dancers. You can see nude body painting. You can see comedians, musicians. Honky Tonks talking about apocalyptic videos playing in the sky 24 hours a day.
Right, and actually, next time I think I'm gonna do that. I'm just gonna tell people, if there's an act you don't like, if this is not speaking to your inner creativity, or if you just think it's irritating, just go outside for 10 minutes. Every act is going to be 10 minutes maximum. If you don't care for it, go outside, come back in. It's okay, because the next one, it's either going to blow you away, it's going to freak you out, or it's going to be something that's not for you. Any one of those three, I'll take.
Absolutely, and that's what we need more of here. The arts can be kind of anemic in this area because they're not connected enough. Which we have to thank you for coming in and doing this interview. In fact, we're going to come back with our second part in just a few minutes. I hope you join us then. So right now, we're going to say goodbye with Big Daddy Voodoo. Thank you so much. Come back and see us. So if you're just joining us, this is Jesse A.M. and Big Daddy Voodoo here for Beat About Late Night. This is our special guest arts and culture interview for the August edition. So this is our second part. We were just talking to you about Little Silly
Roller Girls?
Little Silly Roller Girls. No,
I think that's a great name for a derby.
I think they would beat the crap out of me if they heard that. But we were talking about Little City Roller Girls and the Secret Society Vaudeville here in Jump City at the Willow Tree Cafe. We're coming back for a second part of the interview where we're going to talk more about some of your favorite moments, some of your hardest choices in these. So can you tell us about maybe a little bit of your history in the arts and the different projects, maybe your proudest moments in those?
I go way back. In Johnson City alone, gosh, even in high school, and I doubt that anyone listening to this are old enough to remember the old Quarterbacks, which was down on Walnut Street. It was the 80s, so I'm like 16, 15 years old going to the bars and going to see Beat Your Mother with a Putrid Herring bands, and I can't even remember all the others. I just remember my buddy Russ's band was that. But so I would go from there, and then years went by. Quarterbacks moves across the street, and back then Johnson City was where you had to come to make it as a band. Southern Culture on the Skids started by playing Johnson City. They were here all the time. They would bring out pots and pans, and everybody knew them, and I was at those old shows. Years go by again, and I just became known in the community. I was that guy that went to see the good bands, and I met the people that were the people, and I've lived here my entire life. I was born in Johnson City. I was raised in Johnson City, and now years and years later, I just knew all the locals that I needed to know in order to, hey, what's going on here? What's going on there? Who are the artists? It was just something that came kind of naturally to me.
So is that sort of how you began to accumulate the different artists that you put together for your own art house?
Yeah, exactly. It was just through knowing people, and then, I go to college, and I studied broadcasting. A lot of good it did me.
I understand too, but
I studied broadcasting in college, and that's where I was in college during Kenny Chesney's last semester. And so I'm sitting down there with this guy who's just smoking like a freight. Back then you could smoke in the hallways. I know people are like, what? In ETSU, that hallway outside broadcasting was just all smoke. You couldn't even see.
The stress goes to your eyeballs.
Exactly.
And then through your lungs.
Exactly. Because it is a stressful thing. And so I would hang out with Kenny Chesney, and he's like, I'm having a big show, so we go down to Quarterbacks, and he had this big show for everybody, and people are like, wow, that guy's going to go somewhere one day. And I'm like, nah, he's Kenny. He ain't going to last. He's a flash in the pan. Well, I was wrong. I admit it.
But you were telling me earlier about a point in your life, probably not too far after that, in which you started clearing out all the furniture in your house,
right,
and putting together these art shows and bringing people in that you trusted.
So, again, ETSU is always somehow linked to everything I do. I moved onto campus at ETSU. There was one private house. Actually, there were two private houses at the time on ETSU that were not owned by the university. They were privately owned, and so they were like an island of the real world. And I got this apartment, and I moved in, and it was really bare, and it was kind of a dive. No, it was exactly a dive, and I didn't have a lot of stuff. I'm like, I was young. I didn't have a lot of stuff, so I was like, I got a great idea. Let's have art shows. You, my friends, are artists. You're all going to college at the same time. Bring your stuff by and show it in my apartment. So I pushed all my stuff into a tiny little back room closet. I slept in this tiny little back room closet. So while everything in my apartment that was mine was back there, I had nowhere to sleep. So I would have to sleep with other people.
It can be very daunting and really taxing to do that too. If anyone knows the Projects House that used to be up on West Walnut,
right?
Nikki Hamlin is a good friend of mine. She's amazing, and she used to donate her space for shows, for art galleries, for everything. And that's more of what I want to see in this community. But it's hard to put on, and it's hard to keep going.
That's the trick. I mean, you're giving up a lot. I mean, at first it was like, this is awesome. I'm having all my favorite people. I mean, my favorite artists. This wasn't really that long ago. This was only maybe 10 years ago, because my friend Stacy came by. Stacy Williams. She comes by and she's like, I want this closet, and she took my closet and put these little. They were like pantyhose filled with fluff, and they looked like worms crawling out of the walls in my closet. And so there was a sign on the door. Open the closet to understand, and you open it, and it's just filled with worms. We had my buddy Jason, who probably is a serial killer, because he would take magazines and cut out naked girls and make them into collages, tiny little naked girls, and make a big collage of a naked girl that was like getting undressed and nobody could see her. They were always distracted.
That's so meta.
Exactly. And then his brother brought in an entire frame at one point that was filled with nothing but condiment packets from every restaurant he could find. A condiment packet, and they were intricately lined up, and this thing was like 8 feet tall and 1 foot wide. And these are the artists. These are my friends. That was Jason's brother Troy. And Sam Mays would come by. The late Sam Mays, one of the greatest guys ever. He passed away a year or so ago. Miss him so much. This is where I met Sam. Sam would come by and hang out. Brian Lewis Saunders, a local poet, one of the few true, honest to goodness poets that I ever have met. Love the guy to death. He would come by. That's where I got to know him. Stacy caught me on fire with a hookah once, but that's a whole nother story. But the thing was, we had all of my favorite artists. I only asked my favorite artists to come by, and then we would put up posters. We would call people. We would go to Kingsport, Bristol, Johnson City, the art people, and say, hey, we're having this show at my house. Come by, check this out, because we're selling it all.
And it has to be a really hard choice to stop that, because it costs so much and it takes away from your life. Like you were saying, with roller girls, you have to be in roller derby because everything is roller derby. But what is one of the hardest choices you've ever had to make in your time in the arts?
Oh, the hardest choice is it's always the same. I mean, you got to keep in mind at this time I'm not an artist. I've never made any claims to be an artist. I'm a guy that my best friend is an artist, and what I learned of art I learned from him. But it changed my life because I really think that I understand. But personally, I considered myself a filmmaker for 20 years. All I wanted to do was make films. Everything in my life was trying to get together enough people for the crowd scenes, trying to get together somebody to run audio while I ran the camera, getting a camera, finding a microphone, getting together everything you need, because you can't just, now you can, but this is the late 90s. This is the early 2000s. It's hard to find the equipment you need.
You can't exactly film it on your phone in the 90s.
Right. And
Motorola didn't come equipped with that.
And so we liberated some equipment, and we made a series of Dragon Con shorts. They're at my YouTube page, Techno Bohemia. Search for it on YouTube. But we made a series of Dragon Con shorts for Dragon Con TV, and they still run today. This was 2004 we made these videos. The fans for years loved them. The weirdest day of my life, and I'm going to tell you what my biggest choice was, but the weirdest day of my life is when I went to Dragon Con and there was a guy dressed as me from one of my videos. He dressed as the alien hunter, and you'll have to go watch the video to see what I mean. it's really just a dumb hat and a shirt. But he was but unfortunately the guy, as my grandma would say, bless his heart, the guy was like 400 pounds dressed like me. And it really hurt my self-image. I went back in the room and like, guys, do I look like that? Okay, sorry. But my point is, this was my passion. This was my palette. This was the way that I thought that I interacted with the world, films. It got to a point one day where I had to decide, do I want to keep going through this? And I mean, constant disappointment for me, because there's never enough money, there's never enough equipment, there's never enough people. There's always do it as best you can and start faking it and filling in. Do I want to keep doing this, or do I want to just give it up, and do I want to find a new way to go? And the hardest decision of my life was giving up my dream. I stopped. I totally gave up trying to make videos anymore. I mean, I made them at work occasionally, but I mean, let's be honest, those are propaganda films, and that's just corporate video. That doesn't count. It scratches the little itch I have occasionally. But I decided to not do it anymore and focus on this roller derby thing, this announcing thing. Well, long story short, after a few years of working really hard and volunteering for anything that needed an announcer, I mean, I've recently just gotten a job working for Bristol Motor Speedway. I got paid to announce a monster truck race. I know. I'll give you a moment to laugh. I know it's a monster truck race, but I got paid to do something I loved. I had the best time announcing a monster truck race. They're bringing me back to announce a stage at the races in the next week. Wednesday, Friday, and Saturday. I'm going to be announcing a stage. This blows my mind, because I'm listening to bands, I'm eating the free food backstage, and all I do is go, here's the next band. So, on one hand, yeah, I made a decision that to this day hurts me. When I think of not being able to pick up a camera when I want and going out and realizing these images in my head, every single time it hurts me. But I've got a new gig now that people actually seem to appreciate, that I can actually go forward with. So what happens, maybe one day I get to a point where I can pick up the camera again. I can use the work that I've been putting into it. And I mean, you don't understand, 8 years of doing stuff for free, doing every local event, charity, and I love it. Don't get me wrong, I love every moment of it. And I love doing it for free if it's for a good cause. But now I'm getting to a point where I actually can see a little bit of light. So we have the Secret Society. I mean, even the cast and crew are making money now. I can't tell you how proud I am of that. That comes directly out of this decision I made to follow my announcing world. The monster truck stuff paid for my dog to go to the vet. I mean, that's important to me. And they're paying me again. Plus, in the future, they've asked me to come back for drag races, to maybe host these other things. And I know the true artists are like, well, you're totally selling out. I'm like, you don't understand. I've wanted to sell out since the beginning.
Exactly. People who say you don't want to get your hot and your fast, I want my hot food and my fast carbs.
Exactly. I've been hoping somebody would ask me to sell out since the first day I went to the first broadcasting class. That's what I wanted, is to sell out. And I make no pretension that what I do is art. What I do is what makes me happy. And if what makes me happy makes other people happy and they can appreciate it and call it art, that's somebody else's call. All I can do is what makes me happy. And I can tell you, the Secret Society and doing these announcing events, venues, I don't care what they are, whether they pay or not, they make me happy.
Okay, and that's what you really want to live for, and that's what we're striving for here, too. So before we let you go, because we're going to have to wrap this up, you're going to have to tell me the story.
Jesse was asking, how do you become a roller derby announcer? And I said, well, it involves a spanking booth. And Jesse's like, well, you have to tell this story. Okay. So 2007, this is about the time where I'm getting fed up with video. I've put so much of my own money into it. I've put so much of my own time, and this is before it was. I mean, nonlinear video editing was there, but it wasn't as easy and accessible as it is now. I mean, you don't understand how fast that stuff is refining and refining and refining. Now I can do it on my iPhone. But at the time, I was in that moment where I need to make a decision. I need to figure out, do I want to keep working with video, or do I want to take a chance and hang out with my friends? Because my friend Stacy, she had this is the same artist that had been at my apartment for all these art shows. I love Stacy to death. Her senior thesis, she did an 8-bit video game to go along with the comic panels that she did. She had gotten involved with a roller derby team. And I was like, I love roller derby. My dad and I watched that when I was a kid. Well, she's like, no, this is a little different. This is modern roller derby. And we take it kind of seriously. Well, it turned out they didn't. They were a bunch of partiers. I mean, they were a bunch of partiers. So she introduced me to the other girls on the team, and they were trying to get started. So they were practicing, but they just didn't have enough money to start that bouting process. So Little City Roller Girls would have fundraisers, and the fundraisers would be at local bars. They were at the Hideaway, at Newman's, at Cahoot Nannies. I don't know if anybody remembers Cahoot Nannies, but
I do. I saw the best Pretty Things peep show at Cahoot Nannies.
Yes, yeah, that was great time seeing Pretty Things at Cahoot Nannies. And Jamie, the owner, and Elise, who was the bartender at the time, they became friends of mine, and. So the Roller Girls had a special night of bands and carnival events was the theme. Carnival was the theme. And I got invited. Stacy's like, yeah. But of course, at the time, me and my buddies all got invited because they're fundraising off of us. We were financing this roller derby team pretty much by ourselves. We were the super fans. We were the 5 guys that showed up to absolutely everything because girls. No, because they were all good friends. And
girls.
And girls. Okay, let's be honest. Girls. So here we are, and the bands are okay. I don't even remember who was playing that night. What I do remember is I'd had a little incident with the girl I was seeing. And in typical guy fashion, I wanted to drink it away. So I started drinking. And I've really never been, well, not since college, that kind of drinker. So I was drinking a little bit more than usual. And Stacy had talked to me about, you should announce for the roller derby team. I'm like, what does that take? What do you do? She goes, I don't know. I just know that somebody needs to do it. I was like, oh, okay. So, okay, let's face it. I'm rip-roaring drunk at this point. And I'm sitting at the bar, and no matter what the roller girls did on their skates, I was yelling it at the top of my lungs. I was like, and so she's just skating in circles. There she goes, picking up another drink. This is a long time ago. They can't drink and be on skates now. And she's skating across the room again. And it went on like that, and I just kept getting a little bit more tipsy and a little bit more tipsy until I noticed finally that booth I'd been looking at, which no one had been using all night, was called the spanking booth. They were raising money by selling spankings. But no one had used it all night. It was just a white frame, and one of the girls was standing next to it looking bored. And I was like, you guys not selling any spankings? And they're like, no, we're not. I was like, well, that's terrible. Can I help you? And like, well, yeah, if you can sell a spanking, you should do it. All right. So I start kind of being the carnival barker, and I'm yelling at the people in the room. Now, keep in mind, a band is playing in the next room, and it's really loud. But I start shouting to this room using the theater voice. I went to ETSU to be a theater major. I took one class, dropped it. But I still have I have the theater voice.
You know how to project.
Exactly. So I'm projecting and like, come on, step up, get your spankings, and people start going, well, I don't know. I'm a proper person. I don't like getting spankings. So I was like, start buying your friends spankings. Oh my gosh, it took off like wildfire. People were buying their friends spankings and then dragging them up there, and the girls were just spanking people left and right. It became a spank fest. that really sounds worse than I'd meant it in my head. But I'd gone, I was yelling, I was shouting, and finally somebody comes down. The band has asked you to be quiet. The band, the amplified band up there, like, yeah, they can hear you and they think you're being too loud. I was in the next room.
So did you buy them a spanking?
I didn't, but the story's not done yet. Here's the interesting bit. So the spankings are understandably dying down because the girls' hands are getting tired. Good tip, if you're ever running a spanking booth, don't use your hand. Good tip.
Paddles only.
Paddles only. And speaking of paddles, turns out one of the roller girls goes out to her car and goes, hey, why don't we use these? Did you know they make a paddle bandolier? It's it's like a cloth thing that rolls out about 4 feet long. And hers had tiny little paddles on one side that are like just good enough for hitting the back of a hand. And like a pizza spatula on the other side that was made out of aluminum. And I was like, oh, girls, I'm going to make you some money. I started selling spankings by paddle size. The little one was 50 cents, and that got you a spanking on the back of the hand. The big one, which I had to have demonstrated several times, the big one was $10, and I kept telling people they couldn't possibly stand the big one. There's no way that any human could take the big one. So people started buying their friends spankings based on paddle size. The girls, by the end of the night, I was done, by the way. I was just done. I got spanked so many times. All I remember is pain the next day is really all I remember. But after that, the girls came up and said, we have never made so much money at an event in our entire existence. We have never made this much. This is enough to get us where we need to be to start a team. Do you want to be our announcer? I was like, I don't know. I'm pretty hungover. Do I have to do it right now? They're like, no, you just need to show up for the bout. I was like, oh, okay. And that's how I became a roller derby announcer.
And with that, we're going to call this interview done. I don't think we can get any better. But I want to thank you, Big Daddy Voodoo. If you didn't see him on Thursday night, August 14th at Beat About Late Night, O'Mannon's Pub, you need to be at the Secret Society Vaudeville shows in John City or Willow Tree Cafe or Little City Roller Girls.
August 27th.
August 27th for the next secret show.
Right.
#SecretJC. I'm Jesse A.M. for Beat About Late Night. Thank you and good night.